Please begin by making yourselves very, very comfortable. This is your time. This is time that you have manifested. This is time that you have decided that you are worthy of. Please begin by taking a deep breath in through your nose, allowing your abdomen, your lower abdomen, to fill. Exhale softly out through the mouth. Take a moment now to scan your body and notice where you might be holding tension. Scan the top of your shoulders. Scan your arms. Relax your palms. Relax your lower back. Notice how, on command, your focus does exactly what you'd like it to do. Focus on your feet now. Ask the muscles of your feet to relax. Just relax. Listening to the sound of my voice, bring your focus to your thighs. Ask the muscles of your thighs to release any tension. Notice how your mind is there, waiting for you to tell it what to do. Notice how your mind listens, follows your command. Notice now the observer within you, the commander within you, that has the power to tell your mind where to go and what to do. With your mind's eye, imagine a red rose. With your mind's eye, imagine this red rose from all sides. Imagine the fragrance of a rose. Imagine smelling the rose. Imagine touching the rose. Imagine what the rose feels like. Roses are generally feel like velvet. Roses generally feel like velvet. They're soft, supple, and very fragrant. Imagine now a tennis ball. Imagine the bright color of a yellow tennis ball. Imagine touching the tennis ball. What does the tennis ball feel like? Imagine bouncing the tennis ball. What does the sound of a tennis ball make? The reason I've asked you to participate in these two visualizations is because I'd like to introduce you to the power of a focused mind. When we are in chaos, our mind feels at a loss. It can only play with the tools that are in the shed. When we are anxious, we are not very conscious. When we are angry, we are not highly conscious. We are in the emotions of sadness and grief, anger, hopelessness, and resentment. It's as if we become the rose without any perception. It is like we become the tennis ball and we lose our ability to perceive the rose and to perceive the tennis ball. when highly anxious, we must ask ourselves, where has the calm, detached, silent observer gone? Where has the higher self gone? When highly emotional, the limbic system is activated. All sirens are go. It is like an eclipse of the higher self. We cannot see our light. We cannot feel our light. We are in fear. Fear is the opposite vibration of love. We are out of love, and we are in fear when anxious and hopeless. The power of an organized mind means that you as a human find the ability to observe your emotions rather than react to them. You have the ability to detach, to surrender, and to recognize that you are not your emotions. You are the observer of your emotions. It is time to surrender to what is, to make peace with our suffering, to accept our human selves, to accept that all humans have an anxious self, a self that is impacted by trauma, by fears, by feeling disapproved of, by feeling unworthy, by feeling afraid of not having enough money, by fearing what other people think. It is human to suffer. It is normal for many of us to suffer. We are human, therefore we suffer. The key to healing and transcending is to surrender to our suffering. It is to understand that we are not alone, that everyone in the sea of humans, here, past, present, and future, all humans suffer at one point in their lives or another. The key to healing and transcending, the key to inner transformations, is to accept our humanness. And in the acceptance of our humanness, we find compassion for the self, compassion for our inner child, compassion for the self within us that has tried to be good enough, compassion for the self who has tried to love, compassion for the self who has only wanted to be loved, compassion for the self who has felt unloved, compassion for the self who only wanted to feel safe and heard and like they mattered to someone. We find compassion for the parts of ourselves that have felt so forgotten, so abandoned, and so unprotected by those we have loved and needed and trusted, those who should have protected us, taken care of us, and cared. Only when we accept the pain in our lives can we transcend the pain in our lives. Only when we are willing to become patient with our healing, accepting of our pain, understanding of our lower selves, understanding of our human suffering. Only when we stop blaming ourselves for why we suffer. Only when we stop judging ourselves for not being happy. Only when we step into our emotions, the emotions that we are often too afraid to explore, or who have been brainwashed to believe are silly, wrong, unimportant, or invalid. Only when we embrace the space within us that is full of pain and full of our suffering, and we accept the suffering of our human self, can we transcend and make the journey towards higher consciousness, which gives us higher perspective, a higher understanding, and a connection to higher self. We are both a lower self and a higher self, and we remain in our lower self consciousness until we accept the self right where it is. This is difficult to do for a human, considering the default settings of the brain. The default settings of the brain cause the human mind to run from itself, to seek approval externally, to remain on the path of external validation. Until we take the time to accept our suffering and we become curious about the hardware of the brain, the lower self runs our ship. It is helpful to remember that the brain can only play with the tools that are in its shed. If you were conditioned and programmed as a child to feel unworthy, you have been disconnected from your authentic self. Your brain fears authenticity. Your brain has been conditioned to hide the true self. This is the essence of codependency. Hiding the self, pretending things are okay when they're not, perfectionism, the fear of being seen as a burden, focusing on others at the expense of the self, propping others up at the expense of the self, complimenting others to keep them happy, to avoid abandonment. These are all actions and functions of the lower self, the wounded self, and the default settings of the brain. It is not your fault if you have never felt good enough. It is not your fault your brain has been wired to avoid the emotions that arise when one consciously touches that shame. It is not your fault that cognitive distortions have you believing that approval outside of you is the answer you seek. These are functions of the lower mind. However, it is possible to break through and break free of the chains of the past. It is possible to understand the lower self from right where you are, from a place of compassion, a place of curiosity, a place of radical acceptance, accepting all that you feel without judging how you feel, loving the inner you that has suffered in silence, no longer seeking permission to feel what you feel, giving yourself the space to hold and observe and experience painful emotions, giving yourself 15 minutes a day to feel, to experience, to process, to acknowledge, and to honor. Our painful emotions represent truth, and the truth sets us free. When we accept our truth, we are freed of it. It is the first step to emotional healing. The journey forward may be a long one, but it will always lead you back to the authentic self. Healing the self means we learn that we are enough. We were always enough. Our feelings matter. We matter. We are enough when we are anxious. We are enough when we are sad. We are enough when we are confused. We are enough when we are depressed. We are enough when we feel hopeless. We are enough always, and no matter what. As we heal, we learn to explore the parts of ourselves, the people that we love have taught us to deny. We've learned to seek our own validation. We learn to correct our faulty thinking. We learn to catch ourselves when we have a codependent thought. We learn to catch ourselves when we are denying the self. We learn to self-care. We learn to accept the self. We learn to soothe the self. We learn to set boundaries. We learn to support the self. We learn to think more positively about our self-worth. We learn to try one more day to love the self. We decide to never give up trying to clarify our thoughts. We learn to never give up healing our thoughts. We learn to look for the good in our life, no matter how small, right here, right now. We learn to be forgiving to the self. We learn to be compassionate toward the self. We learn to be compassionate towards the planet, towards plants, towards animals. We connect more deeply with nature. We begin to understand the connectedness to all that is. We understand that we share this planet with innumerable other souls who are suffering. We understand that our job is to transcend our own suffering through surrender and acceptance. And through developing compassion for the self, we begin to feel compassion towards others. This is the way to higher consciousness. This is a way to fan the flames of the sacred light within. Dear one, you are enough. You were born enough. I see you. The universe sees you. Others who have walked this journey, they see you. They understand you. They empathize with you. It is time for you to see you. It is time for you to empathize with you. It is time for you to believe that you are enough. No matter what, you have nothing to prove. The universe wants you to step into your birthright for joy and abundance. It's time to allow yourself to love the self, to accept the self, and to step up and out of the subconscious mind, to break free of the chains of the past, to appreciate that you are on a sacred journey, that you are on a journey that requires a changing of your mind, a rewiring of the neural pathways that currently reside within you. The journey toward healing the self is neurological. It is vibrational. It is psychological. It is emotional. And as you activate the emotions of self-compassion, you are literally rewiring the brain. You are literally climbing up and out of the subconscious mind. You are literally finding the bridge that allows you to connect with higher self. Dear one, you are enough. But you must believe that. Open your heart and receive the birthright of abundance. Namaste. 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 Until next time.